Now, I know majority of you. I'm Josh Èrhardt. I know some of you may not know me. What's the Director of Product Marketing doing up here talking to sales? I spent 15 plus years as a data architect, a program manager, and I came from tech sales. AI is not scary, and we're going to set you guys up for success so that way you can help your customers and help them build their own AI solutions without fear. One of the first things that everyone in this room should know, but just to reiterate, it is a growing market. So as a salesperson, one of the key things I think of is there going to be a project for budget to make an investment in Informatica? Well, you look at these numbers according to Gartner, there's tons of opportunity, and it's going to continue to grow. And this is just AI in general, right, across the board. We'll give you specific examples of even more scenarios, but the opportunity is endless, and it's going to continue to grow. Now, one of the key things that we wanted to point out here is that you look at some of the highest growth areas, right? Digital commerce. You look at the largest application market spend, financial management system components, the fastest growing platforms, data science and AI platforms. This is continuing to evolve. It is dynamic. It is ever changing, right? These are great innovative solutions. And one of the key themes that you'll see throughout this presentation is that it has to be built on a trusted data foundation. So there's plenty of opportunity, but let's not put the cart before the horse. So one of the key things that I want to level set here, I know you hear a lot of key terms. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, right, what does that entail? You know, these are just some key words, and you'll get a copy of this deck afterwards. You don't have to memorize this or write this down. But these are some key terms that you want to pay attention to when you're talking to your customers. AI is commonly a business need, right? And so if you're dealing with IT, and we'll talk about this later on in the personas, that it's important to listen for these words and then listen for the opportunities around them. And one of the key things that we're focused on today is the evolution of AI to that generative AI solution, right? The use of those large language models, the natural language processing, other key words that you should listen for. That's really generative AI, just like what we're doing with Claire GPT, is changing the game. It's empowering far more people to be able to interact with things that they never had a skill set before, right? And that's a key opportunity. So we showed you the stats, right, for artificial intelligence. And then you look, okay, what's the market for generative AI opportunities? So again, another level of opportunities for you guys to dive into. And we'll share some customer examples later on. But the key thing to look at here is, what's the biggest challenge? Data quality. What are we good at? Data quality. You know, how has your data environment changed to support or enable generative AI? No changes yet. That seems like a lot of great opportunities for us in the market to go out there. So if they're not talking about it, they should be. This is a compelling event for them to get started, because generative AI is going to be that competitive game changer. And the other key thing is, remember what Amit said, right? CEOs are focused on Gen AI. So that's a huge incentive going into 2024. So we got to get to those C-levels. We got to get those discussions. We got to get into those opportunities. We can't be scared. So hopefully Amber's in the room here. One of the key things I want to call out is enterprise use cases. Obviously, these are broken out by industries, but no matter where you are, you know, commercial, you know, whatever team you're on, a lot of these can translate to whatever your customer is. These are just a few examples, and as Jitesh said in the opening, these are evolving, right? These are use cases that will continue to grow and continue to expand, and they're exciting use cases, right? Personalized product recommendations. We had a customer that had a great kind of expand the wallet opportunity, trying to seek out households, trying to seek out what the family's interested, you know, how big the household is, as well as company opportunities. Well, that's awesome. That is truly awesome, because it's personalizing that experience. But without good data, right, you're going to have a bad experience. So with each one of these, although they're game changing, It requires fit-for-use data to be successful. And real quick, as I see Peter here, what he pounds in my head, Peter Koo, everyone knows him, is these are key use cases, but these are shared services use cases. This isn't an IT director that's going to truly understand the pain here. You have to get the business involved. You have to get the line of business involved. They're going to know what the results of these use cases really mean to them, okay? So think about that as well as when you're having these discussions. So we talked to you about the wonderful capabilities of AI, wonderful capabilities of generative AI. But what are the common AI challenges, right? And it's consistent, it's data. And some of these are hopefully obvious to many of you, but the regulatory and legal challenges. We saw an executive order regarding AI. We see the European Union's AI policies coming soon. And some of the major concerns amongst the recent survey was data privacy, right? Are we going to have another GDPR issue with AI? So it's really important that whatever they're doing, that they have the right data, that they're removing the sensitive data, and they have that transparency. The other key thing is data availability and complexity. You think about these tools that are out there that are creating these AI solutions, a lot of it's coding. A lot of it is not transparent. And if you don't have a solid data foundation on that, then you're going to have a lost opportunity. You're going to have a lot of confusion. And the other key thing is the transparency and the access to that data, right? 68% surveyed listed misinformation as their next highest concern. I think we can all kind of relate to those scenarios where, you know, Brendan came up with a report and then Peter Sheehan came up with a report, and they're not matching. Why is that? Did they have the same data set? Right? That's mission critical to identify those opportunities. And then finally, data quality and reputation. And I'll give you specific examples in each one of these, but I think you'll see that just because you can do it, if you're not ready to do it, right, that could jeopardize your reputation, your legacy, and your business. So the key thing here is, as Ewan always reminds me, you know, what's in it for sales, right? This is great, it's a wealth of opportunity, but what's the compelling event? Well, regulatory and legal challenges are a compelling event for these customers. If they have not acted now, they're already behind. And the risk of leaving it to the developers to just figure it out is astronomical. The transparency requirements that AI regulations are coming is going to be something that an individual developer can't maintain. They need that data lineage. They need that quality control. They need those governance policies to ensure that they're building something appropriate without bias, right? That's not isolating a certain population. These are just 3 key examples that you can bring to your customer and say, hey, what are you doing? And if you're not doing it, you know, are you accepting these risks? Can you afford to accept these risks? And the big thing here is time is not on the customer side. They have to act now, and we have to inform them of that. The other key thing here is, you know, we talk about the data availability and complexity. This is a real customer example. I presented this to the C-level of a customer because the person that we were working with was trying to convince their board that they needed AI. But before they even embark on that, they need to ensure that they have the right data. And some of these are great key points as to why AI can be of value to an organization. You think it would be obvious to everyone, but it isn't always. If you can't explain it simply, right, then you don't understand. And the board doesn't understand, and your customer won't understand. So you see these efficiency gains with these types of stats. It's awesome. It's powerful, right? And if you have something that's too complex, that's not transparent, that's not a stable data foundation, all of this goes out the window, right? They miss all of these opportunities, and then their AI becomes worthless. Can they afford to do that? So the other key thing, the third point that we want to cover is the data quality and the reputation. This seems obvious, but there's hundreds of examples out there, thousands of examples of where it wasn't obvious, right? Why does AI fail? Poor quality data. You look at the Zillow home values corrupted, right? They had bad data, making bad recommendations. That impacts their reputation. The Microsoft chatbot spews racist tweets. If you do not profile that data, check the appropriateness of it, you expose that risk. Cost of poor data management, average cost of poor data quality at $12.8 million per year. All of these are notated there. All of these are publicly available for examples for you to help your customers, but they're numerous. So do not start AI until you've had that trusted foundation, and that's where Informatica can help prevent that loss of data quality, prevent that loss of reputation. And now to beat a dead horse. What does AI need? Anybody? It needs data management, right? The success of AI is dependent on holistic, governed, and trusted data. Garbage in, I don't care how awesome your AI solution is, garbage out, right? That's 101, that's the basics. That's what we did with data warehouses, that's what we did with data lakes, that's what we're doing with large language models and generative AI and all these solutions. We're setting that solid foundation to set those customers up for success. They cannot afford to miss this opportunity. So what are the key things that, before we get into the customer stories, is I want to talk about some key customer personas. Now, this is a real world use case that we're using here, and kind of the journey that we had to get to close this deal. And it was a great use case because what you're seeing with the personas for AI is they're not always clearly defined. They could be a line of business leader, a chief growth officer. They could be, different departments. And one of the things that we wanted you guys to help understand is what are these personas looking at? And when I say personas, I'm not just strictly talking about a chief information officer or chief data officer. I'm talking about the office of. Because whether you're dealing with a Fortune 500 company or a mom and pop shop, they wear many different hats. So you'll see the personas based upon their pain points, right? A chief information officer, Graham, data management. How can I provide great quality data for AI initiatives, right? That's the pain point there. It's, hey, can I do this? And can I make sure that they're going to have the right stuff? The chief growth officer, right? And again, this is an example of a line of business leader because where we're really seeing these generative AI use cases, these AI use cases, is on the business side. They're the ones longing for it. They want to get those insights. What do I need to make AI a success? And then obviously you have the chief information security officers or the office of, right? I think we've all gotten those RFIs and have to fill out those forms. They just want to make sure that the data is not being shared, that it's secure, right? That nothing's going to be exposed. So risk mitigation. And then finally, in a lot of cases, the CDO could be the CFO could be the acting CDO, depending on the company size, but balancing the budget. How much will AI cost, and when can I see the return on the revenue? So these are some of the common key personas that you're going to come across on your journey as you're closing the deal. So, follow the business value framework. It's not just one person that's making this decision. It truly is a team effort. And we'll tell you kind of the outcome and how this evolved and how roles changed throughout the course of the deal. So that it truly is dynamic. It's ever evolving. People are figuring this out. I got involved to help the chief growth officer build their business case for AI. And he knew the value, but he knew he couldn't just say, hey, build AI. He knew he had to have the right data foundation. And they knew they didn't have the right tools to solidify that foundation. So these are your champions. These are the ones that you're going to want to listen for in the line of business and see what their value is, what they're identifying the value is to AI. Right? They're the ones that need the help the business case. They're not always the most technical. So I implore you to partner with them, to help them articulate the value and the win, because you're basically building a business case for you and for Informatica services. And then once we were able to kind of get the business case along, we had to check the box on the request for information. Is my data going to be shared? Is it going to be exposed? Is there any risk? And we're quickly able to solidify that. The metadata privacy presentation deck is available on Seismic. You guys can all access that. And then we met with, at that time, it was the Chief Information Officer. And he just wanted to know, okay, all right, am I going to have to change staff? What's the skill set to support this? What are the costs, of switching over? And reassuring him that Informatica was a codeless solution that's going to simplify his data management experience was a huge win. And then finally, when we presented to the CFO, what's the cost? And I know that's, everyone wants to know what's it going to cost me. And the key thing here was that we presented to the CFO, what's it going to cost them not to do anything? And that was a game changer. And they really knew that they had to take action. We'll give you specific examples in each one of these. Now, this pyramid that you see here, this was an actual pyramid that we worked with the Chief Growth Officer and presented to his fellow board members. And you look at the top of the pyramid, and there's AI, right? That's the diamond. They wanted to build their own generative AI solution. But they knew there was key steps to get there. And these were some of the, they're anonymized, but key use cases that they said were relevant to them that they needed to succeed to get AI. And some of these, right, we can substitute in any industry. They're common themes there. But the first one, right, is they wanted to personalize the customer experience. They wanted to make sure they were providing the right information to the right people at the right time. We hear that all the time. And that's a huge master data management use case. So we got to get our source of truth, right? Proliferate our golden record, get that set and right. You got to have the right data. Then the next thing that we looked at was prediction of market competitive, property value. So this use case is a real estate firm. And the ability to factor in all the right variables to make that assessment is critical. And one of the key things was, all right, can we discover all the right data sources that we have? Let's check the data lineage on those sources to make sure it's complete. Let's make sure we're adhering to the right policies on how we apply that so there's no bias in our AI, right? They're setting that foundation for their data. And then, okay, we have our policies. This is how we're going to treat the data. Do we have the right business rules? So if you think about AI, a lot of it is just equations. And if you don't have fit-for-use data, those equations are going to be biased and altered and incorrect. So having the ability to profile that data set, see the completeness, to be able to truly identify households, to be able to truly identify potential opportunities is a critical operation. And you can see the sequence of events of how we're mapping to each one of those use cases. And then finally, all right, let's set that data foundation for that large language model. Let's make sure that this is the fit for use data, so now we can implement AI. So Informatica unlocked that opportunity. And it was a step-by-step process. But it was something that the board needed to understand in order to get there. So the other key thing is, so that use case that I was talking about was for the Chief Growth Officer. And funny enough, this deal closed, and now he's the Chief Data Officer. So see how that evolves? It's interesting. And the other key thing is, I felt like I was getting passed off. So after I helped him with the business case, then we moved on to the Chief Information Security Officer. And he wanted to see our reference architecture. He wanted to make sure that our data is not going up into the cloud and make sure that we have all the right certs, which we can do in our sleep, right? We have a whole website dedicated to it. We have plenty of the security white paper, right, Bill, if you're in here? We have all that readily available to quickly cross that, any concerns off there. So that was a huge win, quick win. Then the other key thing was the impact on data management. So when we met with the Chief Information Officer, it was interesting. He called me at 6 o'clock on a Friday night, and he's in the same time zone as me, and he's like, hey, I want to go over this. All right, so why can't we piecemeal this together? Why can't I just use this solution and that solution? And I said, we explained the transparency that's needed in order for AI to be successful. And if you look at this, I think Amit did a great job kind of showing the different vendors at play. But what these numbers represent is all the niche players, right? And as I explained to him, yeah, you could go and piecemeal all of these together and try to figure out how it's going to come together. And then when you have a problem with your data, try to figure out where the problem is. Or you could have one solution on one platform that does it all for you, right? And that was a huge win for him because of all of his different licensing. I mean, the future is they're looking to consolidate. They're looking to mitigate these costs, to bring a lot of their applications down to a smaller amount. And Informatica helps them do that. It helps build that transparency. It helps, what I'm gonna talk about in the next slide, keep the cost down, right, in one codeless solution. Right? We've seen it 1,000 times. We presented it with data warehouses. We've presented it with data lakes. Right? We know we're the only data management platform that has all of these capabilities. No one can compete with us on all of these capabilities. Right? We have the most data to learn from for Claire, and we have the vast amount of capabilities. The key thing here is this still rings true, but it's compounded. It is compounded by AI for data management. And the reason why it is because you look at these niche players across these different capabilities, they all have their little AI solutions, right? But the challenge is, how do you share that AI from one capability to another? And a real world example is data integration. You sell a data integration deal, right? And someone is building their pipelines and they quickly realize, uh-oh, I got a Claire Copilot recommendation that this needs to be cleansed. Okay, now cloud data quality is coming into play and applying the appropriate business rule. That's shared AI. Now, if you look at a competitor's experience, how do they share those recommendations to those other applications? And then you build upon that with data governance, all right? How are policies now trickling down to each one of these applications? So that shared AI knowledge becomes broken and that cost becomes exponential. It's not just piecemealing the services together, but all that knowledge, all that artificial intelligence that you're using to simplify this is siloed, okay? And that's where Informatica helps break down those silos. So what I want you guys to walk away with, I'm just gonna talk here quickly, is 3 key AI themes for tech sales. Now, the big thing is this should be obvious to you, but I know some wording and some positioning might be a little bit confusing, so I'm gonna help you with that terminology and help you through visualizations, because pictures paint 1,000 words. The one key thing I want you guys to understand is that we have a data management for AI play. It's very similar to what we did with data management for data warehouse, data management for data lakes, right? So that hasn't changed. They still need holistic, trusted, and governed data for their AI solutions. The other key thing, AI-powered data management. Now that's our differentiator. That's what we refer to as Claire Copilot. If you think about the vast amount of data that's required for AI and how it has to be cleansed and governed, companies aren't going to hire an army of developers, right? So being able to augment that development experience with AI, with Claire as an AI Copilot, helps bring time to value. So that is a key differentiator, as well as shared capabilities of AI across our services. You sell data integration, and then suddenly Claire makes a recommendation of data quality business rule. Now it's sharing that knowledge across and driving that consumption. That's a key differentiator. Many of the niche players do not have that shared AI. And third, the future. Generative AI for data management. This is huge. This is going to empower a much broader data consumer community than ever before. Being able to just ask general questions like you would in ChatGPT to automatically create data management pipelines, business rules, policies, and so much more. That's Claire GPT, which will be coming soon. And just to give you kind of a preview of what our capabilities are going to look like, data management for AI. But again, this looks very familiar to a lot of you. It's similar to what we did with data warehouse. It's similar to what we did with data lakes. You know, they still have to find the right data. They have to cleanse it, right? Proliferate the golden record. enrich that data foundation from additional sources to provide the right amount of accurate data for the models to train, and then govern that data to ensure that there's no bias, there's no incorrect insights, right? So that is still a critical component for artificial intelligence. But let's talk a little bit about Claire. I know tech sales gets this, but I've seen customers, and I've even seen sales struggle. And I want to clearly articulate what Claire is so you can communicate it to your customers. Claire has been around for years for us, and we talk about the 71 plus trillion customer transactions per month. We talk about the 36 plus petabytes of metadata. Who cares? What does that mean to the customer, right? What you're explaining to them is, I challenge Mr. Customer, who else is doing this? Who else has this much data to learn from, right? We're not taking the customer's data and shooting it up into our large language models or our AI, but we're learning from the patterns that they're using. What business quality rules are they selecting, right? What transforms are they constantly using? So that way, we can take that metadata, that insight, and make appropriate recommendations, automations, and insights for the customers. That's what Claire is. And that's a foundation that we've had for years. And it's evolving into what we call Claire as an AI co-pilot. And there's going to be many, many more capabilities to come. Now, a lot of you are already familiar with this, right? Intelligent structure discovery, auto-join recommendations. We are changing to rebrand it to have it as Claire as an AI co-pilot in the tool, to call it out to the customer, to know that they know that it's going to be augmenting their data management experience, to empower them to do more with less, right? And these are just some of the key capabilities that we're providing in each one of these individual IDMC services. And it's only going to continue to grow. And finally, the future. The key thing I want you all to understand is when we talked about data management for AI, AI for data management, and now the future generative AI data management, is that Claire GPT is using publicly available large language models, right? The reason why we do that is why are we reinventing the wheel on the natural language? We're taking that natural language model, we're taking medical terminologies, all those large language models, and merging it with our metadata. So that way the end user can ask an appropriate question and get an appropriate response. Now that's on our private cloud. That's not the customer's data. Again, we're not taking the customer's data into our cloud. We're using those to help simplify the experience for the data consumer. And then from that, right, it's providing the metadata to IDMC to create the appropriate data pipelines, as well as the business rules and policies. And that's the future. That's where things are going with generative AI, and that's something that's going to be a key differentiator for many of our customers. And with that, thank you so much for your time. It's a privilege and honor.